Imagine this. It's game night, and you're sitting around with friends, and you've known most of them all of your life, and you're playing Mexican dominoes. Two tourists walk in and sit down with you, and that's okay because your town's full of tourists, but you're drinking a margarita. And you wonder for the rest of the night whether or not they're judging you. Now I want to go back a few years before that. 13 years old, I remember exactly what I had on: a plaid skirt, green stockings, loafers with my initials on them. And I'm at a basketball tournament, and I'm surrounded by friends, and I look across the gym floor, and I see a group of men walk in, and I'm silently praying that my daddy's not with them. But he is. And I watch my daddy fall from the top of the stairs all the way to the bottom. And I don't say a word. And nobody around me does either. I am the daughter of an alcoholic. And I am also the niece of the former President of the United States. And I'm here today to tell you that you don't have to let your history define who you are. And you don't have to leave the place where that history all began. Now, first off, I want to explain to you that I loved my daddy so much. But there were times when I tiptoed around the house, making sure I didn't get him upset or make him mad. And I had to learn how to cope with that. So reading became my first way of learning how to cope. I didn't know I was coping because I loved to read so much, but I read all the time. I read outside under the tree. I read at night before I went to bed, and I was always at the library when the doors opened, because when I read, I could make that story whatever I wanted it to be. I could be a character, and I could make that story end the way I wanted it to. When I got into high school, I discovered the theater, and oh, that was even better. Because when I walked out on that stage, I could be whoever I wanted to be, and those words could be my words, and nobody could take them away from me, and I could control it. I was Joan of Arc one time. I was good, too. But times changed, and all of a sudden, dun-da-da-da, my uncle becomes president of the United States. And it was wonderful. But what it did for our family was it put us in that spotlight. And we weren't in front of a basketball game anymore, and we weren't in front of family and friends. My daddy became a household word, a name. And with that, so did his drinking. I remember one time in college, right here on this campus, a professor was trying to show us how some children couldn't learn because of their environment. And he said, you know, these children in Biafra have distended stomachs because of malnutrition. Not like Billy Carter's stomach, which is distended because he's an alcoholic. And I didn't say a word. I just slunk down in my seat, not because I was ashamed of my daddy, but because that moment made me realize that the world was not going to see my daddy. It was going to see Billy Carter, President Jimmy Carter's brother, who cannot control his drinking. I found out later that a family friend who was taking the class with me went up to that professor afterwards and said, you do know his daughter was sitting in the room when you said that. That same friend was at that basketball game that time all those years before. And then I became a teacher because that's what I wanted to be. I could control that. If you're a teacher, you know you can go into that room and close that door and be whatever you want to be and become whomever you want to become, and those students become your people. Well, the world followed me that first year because a news reporter found his way to my classroom and came in and asked me, "What does it feel like to be the daughter of Billy Carter?" What? Does he make you mad? Sometimes. Are you ashamed of him? No. Do you love him? What kind of question is that? Of course, I love my daddy. Y'all, teaching gave me an opportunity to put in a student's hands a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird and watch that same student cry when Scout sees Boo Radley for the first time and says, "Hey, Boo." And teaching gave me the opportunity to look at the police chief in my town today and not see him there in his uniform, but see him sprawled out in a chair in the back of my room. That's what teaching gave to me. In the middle of the night, a phone call from a student who says, "I know it's late, Miss Fuller, but I finally figured out what you were trying to tell us all those years ago." Teaching became that. Today, I have the best of both worlds. I didn't leave where I grew up. I stayed for that history. In retrospect, I look back and I know that my family history made me who I am, not in spite of everything, but because of everything. Y'all, when I walk out my front door every morning now, I am looking at a sign that says, Plains, Georgia, home of Jimmy Carter, our 39th president. And I've watched that sign change over the years. Plains, Georgia, home of Jimmy Carter, our next governor. Plains, Georgia, home of Jimmy Carter, our governor. Plains, Georgia, home of Jimmy Carter, our next president, our 39th president. And the day my daddy died, there was a sign stretched across, made by my friends that said, Plains, Georgia, home of Billy Carter, our daddy. Y'all, when I look out my window at work, I am looking at a museum dedicated to the life of my daddy. And I can walk in there and I see pictures of him when he's been drinking. I see pictures of him when he was battling cancer. I can immerse myself in my daddy. My history is what my friends see when they look at me. My history is what my husband married into 42 years ago. My history is what I see when I walk into my mama's house on Church Street and my Uncle Jimmy's house on Woodland Drive, and those walls enclose me with my history. And my history is what I see when I look at my two children and I see my daddy's blue eyes and I hear my daddy's laughter. And I am proud to be able to stay where I am. I am proud to be able to help to make Plains viable. My daddy's choices are not my choices, but my daddy's choices are what have made me who I am. The fact that I've stayed in Plains gives me an opportunity to have somebody walk up to me on the sidewalk and say, Kim, if it had not been for your daddy, my children would not have had Christmas many, many times. And that was at the height of my daddy's drinking. I'm with people who were there and witnessed my daddy's determination and his strength when he decided to become sober after so many years of drinking. And I am there with people who were with him when he faced pancreatic cancer with courage and taught all of us that sometimes you fight and you fight and you fight and you fight and you don't win. And how could I ever forget the day that my daddy handed me a copy of a book on a rainy day at my house and said, when I was 11 years old, Kim, you've got to read this book. It is the greatest book ever written. And when I looked at my copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, unwittingly, he laid the foundation for my teaching career all those years later. I am a product of my history, but my history does not define me. I'm here to tell you that you can take your history and you can make it your own. Y'all, you don't have to leave where your history began. Some people feel they have to run away, but they don't. You need to embrace your history if you can and make it your own and live it. Y'all, if I can be a member of the Carter family with all of its tribute and its honor and all the wonderful things that go with it and the baggage that goes with it, in the place where that history all began, then we all can do it. And we don't even have to leave the city limits of where we are. So I'm here to tell you, take your history and make it your own. Thank you.